and welcome into the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, maybe you're mowing the lawn, or maybe you're changing diapers, or maybe you finally got a minute to sit back, relax, and enjoy your favorite podcast because you finally got those little rascals to bed. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thank you so much for listening. Super excited to be with you. I'm your host, Jay, and I'm joined by former All-American, former NFL offensive lineman, Levi. Levi, how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's a nice day over here in Spokane, Washington. I'm actually going to call it Dad's Day. I get a little dad's time out today. I just bought the new NCAA. So,
Let's go.
All the girls are going to go out to the mother-in-law's cabin and go swimming, and I'm going to take me some NCAA.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Bro, that game is so fun. Who are you going to pick? Who are you going to pick for your dynasty?
I don't know.
Are you gonna rock your album? Well, I guess I don't think Montana's in the game.
No, somebody texted me and said that somebody made them.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's tough. After losing my scholarship to the University of Oregon, not a big fan of them.
Yeah, makes
But
sense.
I never was a big fan of University of Oregon. I was a big WSU guy.
All right.
So I rocked WSU last night and kind of got rocked.
Oh, yeah. No, I started my dynasty with Old Dominion.
Old Dominion?
I went with the ODU Monarchs just because I love the colors and the running back on that team, Roche. He's good. I don't know if he's for real, who he actually is, but a solid running back in the game. So
Yeah,
what matters.
maybe I might pick a FCS like James Madison or App State.
Yeah. Yeah, I went Sun Belt Conference because the competition's a little bit less. So
Yeah.
just to start out with. Then I moved to UW, and then I started getting shellacked. So, but regardless, we're gonna jump into that. Before we jump in, just a little bit of housekeeping here at the top. Just shout out to all the partners of the podcast, of course. Forefathers Apparel. You guys know I love Forefathers, love their polos, love the brand. They have some really cool stuff coming out and on the horizon. Just keep looking at the website. Really cool polos, great stuff for dads, for activewear. If you like looking nice while also looking fun at the same time, Forefathers got you covered. And yeah, that intro beat as well as our closing beat are brought to you by the Podbeat app. You can add a beat to any podcast with the Podbeat app or to any audiobook as well. It's fantastic. So enough of the business. Let's talk Levi. Levi, you are a former All-American offensive tackle. You began your football career at Oregon before transferring to Montana, where you became a unanimous All-Big Sky Conference player and an FCS All-American by your senior year there. But what I didn't know until I looked it up is out of high school, you were a first-team All-State tight end,
Yes.
which is really cool. But you also didn't start playing football until you were in high school.
Yes.
And so, I mean, you're 6'7". Of course, it was probably either basketball or football. And, choice there, great. First year at Oregon, you redshirted while moving from tight end to offensive tackle.
Sure.
What made you move from, being an all-state tight end to an offensive tackle while at Oregon?
So yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy because I got all GSL, all Greater Spokane League, and I was walking through the halls wearing my Letterman jacket, and I remember that, and my freshman coach goes, "Congrats, Levi," and I was like, "Congrats on what?" And he goes, "All state." I go, "You mean all GSL?" And he goes, "No, Levi, you're all state selection." So that one was crazy. And coming from a 1-9 school was a pretty big accomplishment. They said nobody's done that in 20 years at my high school. And to address the next question, there's not a lot of people that raise their hand and say, "I want to be an offensive lineman." And so that switch, I went down to University of Oregon. I was eating good. Of course, I was training way better, and I gained 20 pounds down there.
Oh, okay. So you go from like 280 to 300 or so?
Yeah, and 280 they just switched up running the power I to their running gun, which they were known for.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's not a lot of 280-pound tight ends anywhere.
No. Mm-hmm.
So, great hands, a little bit slow, good feet for an offensive lineman. So it was just kind of an easy transition. I think they knew that was going to happen before I went down there.
Makes sense. You kind of just slid over one spot pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Were you on the right side of the line or left side?
They had me going at left tackle. So
Very cool.
that's what they were grooming me for. And when I went to University of Montana, that's where I stayed was well, I started out right guard, right tackle, and then my last 2 years at left tackle.
Very cool. And then after that 2005 season, along with 3 other players, according to Wikipedia here, so I'm not sure how accurate this is, you 3 left for more playing time, essentially. But then that's Wikipedia, so.
And that was really nice of University of Oregon to say that. But when I go out there and I go speak, it reflected on. I always try to reflect because if I'm not reflecting, I'm not looking at was there growth, did I step back? So I made up this one thing I researched and put together a workshop about 9 mental skills, and I put my counseling background into that too. What did I have? What was the difference between high school Levi, NFL Levi, and then father Levi? Like, what's the difference? And the biggest reason why I lost that scholarship was because socially I wasn't ready. My coaches, my people, my mentors, they were so like busy trying to make sure I was football and academically ready. And I was. We got it together. We pieced it together and it was a struggle. But when you're talking about like social skills, when you're talking about these soft skills, positive self-talk, mental imagery, mindfulness, positive attitude, people skills, all these things that when you're poverty, when you're in just these cycles, you don't get these things because you're worried about eating. You're worried about is the light's going to be turned on.
Mm-hmm.
You're not worried about, oh, I'm gonna wake up today and I'm gonna say 3 positive things about myself. I'm gonna love
Yeah,
myself.
that's the farthest thing from the front of your mind, like you're worried about where your next meal is gonna come from. Are you even gonna have breakfast? Are you gonna have dinner that night? Are you gonna have water? Are you gonna have light? Are you gonna be able to take a shower before you go to school that day?
Yeah,
Or are you gonna wake up early enough to run down to the school and jump in the locker room and clean up before school day starts?
yeah.
That's focus on surviving.
Auntie, uncle gonna be over. They're gonna be drunk or dropping off kids or all these things that we really don't. It's why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we know more about that now than we did then because we didn't want to talk about
Yep.
it back then. But
Mm-mm.
now the conversation's open and we want to sit there and be able to say, are you okay? I'm not going to get mad at you for not bringing your book bag because you had to stay up and take care of your sister or brother,
Mm-hmm.
So it's changing a lot in a very good way for that.
100%. And so after Oregon, you went to University of Montana, where again you became an all Big Sky Conference tackle. Your senior year, you were unanimous selection to the 2009 All Big Sky Conference team. You were also an NCAA D1 All Champion Subdivision All American selection, an American Coaches Association first team, and Associated Press third team, and Sports Network third team as well that same year. So 2009 was huge.
Yeah.
Which makes sense because that was your senior year. Next year, it was on to the draft. It was on to the NFL. You went undrafted in the 2010 draft, but you ended up signing with the Chicago Bears and an undrafted free agent in April 2010. You were waived on September 4th, 2010. But as the case happens, often with NFL players, is that you re-signed to the practice squad the next day. So you didn't have to go very far. Maybe just change where your locker was. But on January 4th, 2011, you signed a futures contract with the Bears, and then you were released on September 3rd, 2011. So a roller coaster at this time. But you were signed to the practice squad the next day, November 18th. You were activated from the practice squad when Abe Karimi
Yep.
was placed on IR, and the Bears waived you on May 14th, 2012. So after the remainder of the 2011-2012 season.
Yep.
And then you went on to play for the Vikings. And then after the Vikings, that didn't work out. And then, the Vikings, I'm not a big fan. I'm a Seahawks fan. So,
Yeah.
But then you signed with the Spokane Shock in 2013 of the Arena Football League. You played between the Arena League and the Lone Star Football League for a couple years before it looks like hanging it up at the end of the 2013-2014 season. And yeah, so my question is, when And you're a father of three, right? Two. Father of two.
Yep.
So when did you become a dad? Did you become a dad during your playing days?
So
Yeah.
my first child was during the lockout.
Eh.
Me and the wife had a little bit more time on our hands than usually would. So, it was, when that happened, me and my wife, we met when we were in high school. And so when we got back together, she moved to Chicago, and it was pretty much just lights out after that. But having a child, I always wanted to have a child. Like that was something I looked forward to. Being a father, being a dad, being able to hang out with my family. Just something, my mom gave me a lot of love, but there also was a lot of, the other things that you sit there and you look around and you're like, oh man, all my friends get to do all this stuff and I don't, or I get to do it with you. That was one thing that my mom always told me. She was like, Levi, you give your kids better than what you had. And
Hmm.
my mom did that with this. I mean, there was still a lot of trauma.
Now, were you raised by only your mother?
Yeah, so, so many Native Americans are men raised by women. And that's one of the things I try to preach to them. I don't try to preach, I just ask. I go, our women have been taking care of us in this culture and us as indigenous people for so long. I was like, it's time for the men to not stand in front of them, but stand next to them.
Hmm.
Right. That's one of the things we really need. We need to come together. One of my mentors, he goes, women hold up half the sky and men need to hold up the other half. And so I like to sit there and I like to think about that. And I just like to challenge, say, this is what we got to do.
Yeah. No, 100%. That's important to be part of that, man. You got to stand alongside them, right? The women take care of us a lot, right? Like my grandmother took care of me. She raised me for a good portion of my adolescence and growing up and whatnot. So, big shout out to her,
Yeah.
doing what she did, raising me
Big shout out
from
to all the women out there doing it.
100%. And so it's, you got to stand by them, especially in our different cultures. It's very similar in cultures I'm from. Being from Oakland, I have loose ties to Native American ties through family and whatnot. My great grandfather was registered. My grandfather was registered and whatnot. And then, no, my great grandfather was. My grandfather was not. Uh, he didn't want to be for
Yeah.
whatever reason. But
It wasn't an advantage back then. It was
mhm,
that era. They were like, I don't want to do that because it's going to cause more trouble for my family.
yeah, that's why he didn't do it. Was because he didn't want it to. Essentially, he was thinking about me and like
Yeah.
my family and whatnot. Wasn't just thinking about his kids. He was thinking about his grandkids and whatnot. And that's what he always said. He's like, I didn't do it because of you guys. So I believe if he would have registered, it would have also been Blackfoot or Blood Tribe as well. That's what my great grandfather was. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, it's just such a different time. And, learning about that, especially at the University of Montana, like, I never thought I was going to go to college. I didn't give myself that shot. I know the one thing that I loved to do was play football. That was the one thing I knew. And then I had to go to school. So, okay, that was a necessity. But, over at University of Oregon, lacking the social skills and, the mental health awareness, going to University of Montana and seeing other Native Americans walking the campus, having ceremonies out there, being brought into the culture, learning about it, having Native American professors. That representation, football saved my life, but having that representation gave me the boost to believe in myself when it came to academics to help me be a better person.
100%. It's because it's so important, to see people like you, to see
Yeah.
people who believe the same things, who come from the same places as you, who have walked the same path as you. Very similar to peer work in itself, where you're talking to people walking the same path as them, and you've walked a very similar path to them, so you're able to walk side by side with them,
Yep.
and help guide them through it. So, uh, I guess I didn't even mention that part. So, Leva, I first saw you speak about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago now, at symposium. You were a keynote speaker, and I'm pretty sure after your talk that day, I'm not sure which keynote you gave that day. I want to say it was either your journey and how you changed. I think it was that one, or it was your finding our wellness, that
Uh-huh.
one, or I don't remember. I have to go back and check. But I was just so inspired by like you talking and hearing your message and like just everything that was about. Like I got because that led me to more excitement for this year's Y Symposium, which you set the bar so high for that, man. You set the bar real high.
Thank
And
you.
it did. It definitely under delivered this last year, but just a couple weeks ago. But I'm pretty sure I was in your DMs later that day. Um, so here we are. How everything comes full circle here. But
Yeah. Yes, it does.
so you became a dad during the lockout. 136 days, lots of things to do. You're not working, so
Yeah.
you got started a family. What was that like being in the NFL, becoming a dad for the first time, navigating the path that you were given in the NFL because it wasn't a straightforward path. It
Mm.
went from always proving it, always waiting for that opportunity to jump, while also raising a baby at the same time. So what was that path like? Did you have
Yeah.
did you have mentors while you were on the team? Did you have guys who like took you under their wing, other linemen, other dads, or other people who kind of helped guide you in that path?
God, I wish it was like that. But I mean, it's very cutthroat when it comes to that. Those veterans that have been there for that long, they're ready for you to leave the next day. So those relationships are very hard to build. And then some of the guys aren't good guys. That was one of the things like I didn't really enjoy going out with a lot of them just because how they were. And it's just something that to me with my family and my wife was just something how I wanted to do different. And it was very tough because you're sitting there, practice squad, you're making, a base salary. It's really good. Yeah, I think I cleared about $70,000 my first year, which is pretty awesome. But I would
Hmm.
come home and my wife, she would go work. She was a server still. And so I mean it was just very tough and it got to the point where I was like, no, my wife, we can't do this. Get the revolving doors and be
Hmm.
healthy and take care of our family, take care of our baby girl at that time. So I mean, it was definitely some things that me and my wife had to do. Like, you know what, this isn't going to be healthy for a long time. We got to do this, and we've done that. And we've adjusted several times, and that's just always like just communicating with your partner, saying, you know, this isn't going to work for me, and how do we make this better for us? Uh, me and my wife, we go to the table all the time with these problems, with these issues.
All right. Um, so that surprises me because this 2011 Bears team it has some dudes on it, right? It has
Yeah.
some dudes that you think would be good dudes. It was an 8-18, head coached by Lovie Smith.
Yep.
You have guys like Jake Cutler, fantasy superstar Matt Forte, Johnny Knox, Roy Williams, Kellen Davis, Jamarcus Webb, Chris Williams, Roberto Garza, Chris Spencer, Lance Lewis. That's just offensively. Defensively, you have some names like Julius Peppers,
Yeah.
Brian Urlacher, one of the, if not the greatest middle linebacker of all time, if not at least
Brian
top three.
Brian Urlacher was an amazing man, amazing professional. That guy was awesome. I
That's
remember
cool.
the
See,
first day that I made my first year that I made it. So afterwards, everybody gets cut and re-signed and whatnot, and then you go to the cafeteria for breakfast. So if you're going in for breakfast, you made the squad.
mhm.
And he opened up the door and he goes, "Congratulations, Levi." And I was like, "Holy cats, Brian Urlacher knows my name." And yeah, I mean, we've been practicing together for a month and a half, but
Yeah, you've been blocking
that's
him for the last 2 months, trying
yeah,
to at least. I bet he was hard to block.
yeah. He was just a true professional. He was a true professional. But I mean, when it comes to anything in life, there's gonna be good dudes, there's gonna be bad dudes, there's gonna in between. That's just how it is. But there was a lot of great guys. I don't want to sit there and say like, you just you gotta mind your p's and q's. You gotta do what you want to do,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. No, I'm sure, and I'm sure was there a pretty hard like party culture? Was it like, hey, we're done practicing, let's go out on the town? be back tomorrow, be back at the room or whatever.
Yeah, we would have a mandatory offensive line dinner. Our day off was Tuesday, so we'd go out on Monday. And sometimes, and in the culture, it's like, all right, we have something for the offensive line. You got to go. You got to show up, or else there's it's not hazing, it's not bullying, but it's probably not the most healthiest. So you got to go to these things, and some people choose to do what they want to do, and other people choose the other.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So you're coming up in the NFL, your first couple years here, having a baby girl. You guys are sitting at the table having those conversations, trying to figure out this revolving door of everything. What were those things that you guys did to really bring you guys together to get through this, like to get through that revolving door until it
Yeah,
stopped revolving?
I mean, every day I could have lost my job, which was very stressful.
Okay.
So, I mean, at a point in time there, I was like, I got to get in counseling. I was like, this is just so stressful. And every part of my life, college, NFL, and then even after that, when I raise my hand and say, I can't do this by myself, it's time to go to counseling and talk about this and grow and learn. So, I mean, that was a part of it then. But sitting there and, one thing about football and one thing about the mentors that I had in my life, they always said, do this for your kids, do this for your future kids. And so just trying to make those good choices and knowing my wife for as long as I have, I've known her since I was 16 years old. We dated in high school. She went to Shadle Park and I went to Rogers. And I lost her in college by the choices that I made. And just knowing that I don't want to lose her ever again. I do not want to be the reason why I break up a family. I do not want to do that. So, I mean, just sitting there and just trying to stick to my guns and grow and, I mean, really meet her, stand next to her. I mean, that was a lot of it. It was me maturing as a man. And that's one thing that's really hard is I've been playing this game since I was a kid. We're just big guys out there playing football and having fun. So sometimes it does kind of you learn so many good things, but then you kind of get stuck in that childish mentality because we're just out there playing a game, right?
hmm Yeah, playing the game at the highest level,
Yep,
doing it out there, just running and grinding and getting after it. It's
yep,
exciting. But then, I mean, you go back to the locker room, it's just a bunch of dudes,
yep,
right? Just a bunch of dudes who are smashing their heads in against each other.
yep. And we're all loving it, playing the game that we loved as a kid.
hmm
So I mean, that's one of the things that I struggled with is that mental growth. Because you're just a bunch of guys and they're having a great time. And that was one thing I had to do. I had to respond to my wife. And my wife saying, "Hey, Levi, this isn't high school football anymore. This isn't college anymore. We have a family. You got to stop being a knucklehead." And the stuff that you know, maybe staying out a little bit too late with the buddies or played Madden too long or all those things that seem so small, but they were in the end hurting my wife, and I wasn't being responsive. I'm hanging out with the bros for a little bit. You know what? Well, I gotta check. I gotta make sure that my wife is good at home first. So, and that's one thing that I try to do. I try to teach my kids by example. I'm wrong. I'm not always right. I will be wrong a lot, and I will say sorry. I will apologize. I'm not going to sit there and look you in the face and say, "Well, that's what I said." That's not how I do it. So I try to humble myself. I've been humbled a lot, and I try to take those humble lessons to my family and with my wife so I can grow.
It makes sense, man, because, I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in things, right? And all the
Yeah,
things, and, you're just trying to make it.
yeah,
This part of it, you're just trying to play survival and make
and
sure, like, you never know. It's like, well, if I'm good with this guy, then the coaches will see that, and all these things and whatnot. But I can't imagine the stress that it brought at the same time. Trying to be a part of two worlds, right? Trying to serve the full NFL world, trying to serve your job fulfillment, and do that, take care of your family, while also trying to serve your wife and take care of her and your kid and do all these things. It can get messed up real quick if you're not careful. So what was it for you that that brought that together. That was like the wake up kind of moment to where it was like, oh man, I need to do some things different. I need to change some things.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say there was one thing, you know. It's just like growing myself and not lying to myself. This isn't college anymore. We have a human being, we have a little one that's depending on us, and reflecting on myself. I didn't have a father. Doesn't mean I get to be a bad father. And,
Hmm.
I never was. I would never say I was a bad father. Was I immature at times? Yes, but I mean, just being responsive and growing and realizing that. And that's like one thing, a lot of guys, and you see a lot of fathers, they don't want to be wrong. But, it's okay to be wrong.
Hmm.
I love you. I love you, my girl. You guys leaving? Yep. That's my daughter. My daughter's going to
Hmm.
have like day. But yeah, I tell my kids I'm wrong all the time. Just being humble and saying we have to be able to grow as men, as emotional men. That's one thing I really love about being raised by a mother. My mother, every day, people ask me like, "What do you think? What do you think was the difference? What do you think was the thing that got you there?" And one of the things that always pops out is my mom. No matter what type of situation we were in, no matter what type of form she was in, she told me every day, "I love you, my son. You are special. You are a special boy." And so that's what I tell every time I do a camp, I do a workshop. I tell these kids that they're loved. I love them, and if you haven't heard it today, I love you. So that's one of the biggest things, and I do that with my kids every day. Every day they hear, I love you, my wife," and I tell them that they're special, and I'm very proud of them for all their successes because they're two amazing kids.
Yeah. No, I love my little girls. And I think that's so important for just every kid, in those workshops you do now. So let's get into that. So post playing career, you started doing speaking or what? Well, after the playing career was over, 2014, rolls around, summer 2014. Both your daughters, you've had both your daughters by then, correct? Or
Maddox is 7, my boy, and then Isabella 12. So yeah, yes,
okay, 17. So Maddox is 2017. So he's a little bit younger.
yep,
So a little bit post playing career, but so your daughter, she's been there. She's been along for the ride. She's
yeah.
been.
She was born.
That's crazy. So she's been there from the start. That's awesome. Um, did you ever get to take her into the facilities with you, take her to games or sideline or practice with you while you were playing? Or
Yeah, she got to come and see a little bit of Chicago, and then up to Minnesota. She was just a baby, but she's definitely a Bears fan.
nice. I mean, there it could be worse. It could be worse. Could be a Packers fan, right?
That's damn straight.
Yeah. But all right. So post playing career, everything's all wrapped up, said and done. What was next for you after the playing career?
And that was a scary thing. That was one thing. Like when I was in the NFL counseling, um, he was like, "Levi, this is you play football. Football does not define you." I knew by then I wasn't gonna be in the Hall of Fame. I knew I was gonna. I was a hard worker. My body was wearing down, and so I just had to redefine what my next goal was. I had to set myself up for. I'm gonna go out there and bust my ass every day in practice, but I know that this is gonna end one day. And when
Hmm.
it ends, I need to be ready. And so just redefining myself as not just a football player, but being a father, being a husband, being a better person, going out there and doing service work. That got entered into my world. This guy Terry Brocky, Fort Belknap, great dude, awesome mentor. I told him my story, and he goes, people need to hear that, Levi. You need to go out there and tell these kids. And that's when I first started my journey as a speaker. I never thought I was going to do that.
Hmm.
Getting up in front of
Hold on,
people.
I think your hands covering your camera there.
Oh, my bad.
Oh, there you go.
There we go. There. But this guy, he goes, you need to go out there and tell your story. And that was one of the biggest motivations of kind of just that affirmation of like, we need you out there and doing this stuff. And I was like, this story is horrible. I don't want to hear it again.
So like, I don't want to tell it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
I want
But I
it
think
buried. I want it buried.
yes, yeah. I mean, that's what we naturally want. I want to bury this. I don't want to say it again. But that's what I learned through the speaking journey is it's healing going out there and saying it every time.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's something powerful, right? So after your playing career, you have essentially set out to empower youth to set a dream and shoot for it, which is something really important overall, because our youth need that, right? Especially in the communities that you serve, in the Native American community, in, Eastern Washington and Spokane. Like, we both live in Washington, right? I live in the Tri-Cities, you live in Spokane. We know that all the resources are out west. There's very little out here out east for us on this side of the state. So we don't get a lot of it. It's very few and far between out here. To where we have people from the Tri-Cities, we refer them out to Spokane sometimes, because that's the closest place you're gonna get. 2 hours away, but you're gonna be on a 12-month wait list. But that's the closest you're gonna get, kind of thing, which is hard for this side of the state because it sucks. But after that, it is what it is. But your story is really cool.
Yes, and
just from everything that was to what it is now. So you have between yourself
things is when I sit there and I meet a kid
3, 4, 5,
I go,
6,
what's
7,
your dream, what's
8
your goal? And they say, I
different
don't have
workshops,
one.
correct?
It's either they truly don't have one or they're scared to say it. And if I can start it right there from them thinking about it or them being able to vocalize it, that's so important. When I was 6 years old is when I told everybody I wanted to go to the NFL. And everybody laughed at me. I was like, when you sit there and you look around, you go, who wants to laugh at a 6-year-old for telling them a dream? Yeah, it's messed up, right? Yeah, and that's what I try to tell the kids. I go, this life's hard enough. You don't have the right to make it harder on somebody else. So we support,
Right?
and yeah, all these
So bad.
all these services that the communities are building up are very, very important. And being able to make sure that we don't have a 12-month wait list or, that's ridiculous. Making sure that our kids if they want to play sports, they can play sports. If they want to have a safe home, they can have a safe home.
Mm-hmm.
If they want to be able to talk to a counselor, they get to talk to a counselor, So it's changed a lot since the 2000s, but, we definitely got a long way to go. I think as a man,
No, 100%. So
as a father,
how
I
can
think
we
the
empower our
biggest thing
kids
is being
to chase
emotional.
those dreams, to
Being
get after
wrong.
those dreams, to
Showing
express
them
those
that
dreams, to
it's not
cultivate
it's
those
okay to
dreams
love.
that they have?
It's okay to love. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to get help. It's okay for counseling. It's amazing to stand next to your wife. These are the things that pull yourself up by your bootstraps. All those sayings, they just need to go out the door. And I think the first thing is us being emotional men, being able to accept help and be wrong.
Yeah. No, that's a huge part of it, right? Like, our kids deserve to be able to hear that. And for us to be able to tell them that. Additionally, in addition to that, to also be able to tell them, like, I'm sorry, and to apologize to them, and to have that vulnerability with them. Because, I mean, where else are they going to learn it? They're not learning it at home with mom and dad, or if they're only getting it from mom, and they're never getting it from dad, then they're going to always think like, oh, well, men are never wrong. And then that can create a cycle, especially for your boy, where it's like, oh,
he's
well,
a man,
my
he's
dad never
right,
did that, so
or
I don't
he
have
gets
to
to
do
do
it, kind of
this,
thing.
or
Because if he wasn't, then that was my example, and obviously I'm not.
those are just so important. The
and then-
stereotypes and double standards to just be gone, and it has to be done by example.
Yeah, percent, and we have to lead by that example, right? We can talk about it all day. We can mention it all day. We can do all the things all day, right? Talk is cheap, Words are just words, but we have to have action behind the words, and we have to follow through with a lot of things, and to be able to put them into action every day and set that example. It's huge. It's important. The most important part of it, right? And so, along on your fatherhood journey, what are some of those things that have really I don't want to say like been of the most impact to you, but
like recognizing
things
that,
have really
education
helped
was a big
you
factor.
become like the father that
Education was
you
huge.
essentially,
Being
don't
able
get
to
offended by this,
go in
but that
there,
you didn't have growing up.
I did a lot of
You
Native
know,
American education studies, sociology, learning what was going on around me in my environment, why things were so messed up, learning about the genocide of Native Americans and why we have so much trauma and all those things. This education was such a big part. And a lot of people don't like college, they do, but education is key. And being able to learn about what we've gone through, being able to reflect on our lives, that was so healing for me. That was so healing for me. And it made me stop victimizing myself and then also let me forgive other people in my life. I was like, oh, okay, this wasn't totally your fault. This was kind of set up. Society gave us a bad hand, or, we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose who, we come into this world as, right? Otherwise, I would have chose not to be poor. That would have been the best choice. But yeah, we don't get to. And so that education part kind of helped me stop victimizing myself and stop being angry at other people. And whether you want to be a mechanic, you want to own a lawn company, you want to trades, whatever. I just tell people, I tell the kids, like,
yeah,
all right, that's good. That's awesome. Go do that. But don't stop learning. Be open-minded. Continue that education so when something happens in life, you can put yourself in that person's shoes and be empathetic and not sympathetic.
100%. And that's a huge part of the equation here, right? That we're trying to teach our kids is those two things in itself. Well, those three things, being able to forgive others, in the moment and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we can only control ourselves. We control how we react. We can control what we say, what we do, how we feel, right? We're in control.
Yep.
Yes, the initial thing may have made us feel one type of way versus another, but ultimately we are in control of how we feel next, how we move forward with that feeling. We're in control as if we forgive a person or don't forgive a person, and how long we hold on to that grudge for, and how long we let things permeate for, and how long we let them go for without them being resolved. Because those things, yes, you may have let it go and you stop thinking about it, and maybe it's not affecting you anymore, but there's still part of it that's going to be inside of you, right? You're turning the heat up just a little bit on that pot inside of you, right? If you think of it as like a pot of boiling water,
awesome. You said it.
You're just turning the heat up, turning the dial just a
One thing that I
little bit
learned
every time when those things happen. So then it's you turn
Buddha
it, one more
says
thing
human beings
happens, and
keep themselves
boom,
in torment
you're
by
boiling.
doing two things: focusing on the future and focusing on the past. Two things they have no control over, because we are right here in this moment. And you said it greatly right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, and we have to teach our kids to be able to control what they can control, right? And part of that is they can control how they treat other people. They can learn the difference between empathy and sympathy, which for a lot of men, for a lot of us fathers, it takes us a lifetime to learn those things, right? To learn how to sympathize, to learn how to have empathy, to learn how those things, because those things just aren't naturally taught to us, right? They're not just naturally taught to us in mainstream media. They're not taught to us on TV. They're not taught to us in books. They're not taught to us in our social interactions, because that's not, how we're wired to be, essentially. It's part of us. It's part of our brains, part of everyone's brain. So that's no excuse. And I love what you mentioned, how, just because you didn't have a father doesn't mean that means you get to be a bad one. It doesn't mean you have a way out, that you have a justification for your shitty behavior or for the way that you are not shitty at being a dad, because I know you're a great dad. You're a great man itself, and everything you do speaks to your character. So that's not what I'm saying at all. But, it doesn't justify our behavior. We can't let these past things or the cards that we were dealt justify who we're going to be, because we're in control of right now. You couldn't control, like, if you were going to get released the next day, or if you were going to get moved up to the active roster.
I mean,
kind of thing. You couldn't control if you're going to get drafted in the
only thing that you
second
have control
round,
over
first
is your
round
attitude
versus
and your
going
effort.
undrafted. Like,
That's what I tell my
you
kids.
just had to go through the process. You just had to wait it
Your
out,
attitude and your effort.
get through it.
Nothing's
And then
absolute.
NFL, same
there's
story.
mental health issues that happen, but you get to choose what comes out of your mouth. You get to choose what you think about yourself and what you think about other people. Those are active choices. I can be a horrible
Mm-hmm.
person. I can say negativity, or I can be positive. That is my choice.
100%.
Yeah.
And attitude and effort. That's probably what, 80%? 80% of it right there.
Yeah.
20% of it is just working after that and showing up. But well, I guess that's an action. Never
Yeah.
mind. Yeah, that's like 100% of it actually. Thinking about it, those two things, your
And
attitude.
that's also
Because if you go into
that's the
something telling
grind.
yourself that it's gonna
When
suck,
things
it's gonna
things
suck,
are not
right?
fun
If you
anymore.
go, there's probably
When things
days
are
where you
not,
showed
I
up to
sat there.
practice and you're like, today's gonna suck,
Olin
and guess
Crews
what?
wouldn't let us wear
It probably sucked.
sweaters or sweats during the wintertime. This is how we play.
Mm-hmm.
This is how we do it. So we go out there, and man, we're right off Lake Michigan, and this wind's blowing. There's like 3 feet of snow around us. And you're like, this is horrible. And I tell the kids, I was like, that's when growth happens. That's when your morals and your values and your characteristics get built up. Because you can quit. You can quit. I sat there and said to myself, I can quit anytime I want. What the hell am I doing out here? And then they go, oh, offense is up. Go out there, and you remember why you don't quit. You just give it that next step.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to work that next day. I'm going to go to school that next day, and I'm going to continue with it. And it might suck. It might suck a lot. That's where our growth happens. Being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and we have to be able to teach our kids to live in that space too, right? Like, because that's
Yeah.
kind of where we have to let our kids learn to be bored as well, right? Because that's the uncomfortableness for them, for our kids at least, is when they're bored. They get
Yeah.
really uncomfortable. They get real antsy when they're bored because they're like, they don't know what to do. They don't have anything occupying their brains, anything occupying their hands, anything occupying their time, anything stimulating their senses, and they're just bored. But that's when,
Yeah.
our best creativity comes, is when we're just having those quiet, bored moments. And when we're just kind of sitting there zoning out. I don't know how many great ideas I've had where I've just been sitting there zoning out. This
Yeah.
whole podcast came from me sitting at my crappy desk job at a bank, and I was bored out of my mind, and then boom, this whole podcast happened. 150 plus episodes later,
Yeah.
here
That's
we
what I
are,
tell them.
right?
I go, this
And
isn't a
it's
TikTok life.
crazy
I go,
how
what you see, that's not
those
real.
times of
I
just being
go, it took me
uncomfortable and
17 years
bored and
from the first
not
time I set my
stimulated by
dream to get to
something
the NFL. Are
flourishes
you
like
ready
these
to do
beautiful
17 years?
moments
Because I hope
and
you
these
are.
beautiful things.
And that's your investment in yourself. Nobody else can do it but you. That's what my coach said.
Mm-mm.
Levi, you want to go to the NFL? You can do that. Nobody else is going to do it for me. And that's one of the things that I really try to tell my kids, any kids that are around me, people, young adults. This is your investment in yourself. Working at my alma
100%.
mater,
And so
a head
let me ask you
freshman
this
coach,
before we get closed up,
going out
and
and
then
doing
I have another
speaking,
closing question for you.
the
But
next healthy risk,
what's the dream you're
the next
chasing right
step
now?
that I want
What's
to
the
take
dream you're
is
chasing right now?
get a master's in sports psychology. I think that's, hopefully in 3 or 4 years, I hope you see me with my graduating from somewhere with that master's in sports psych. That's what
Very
I
cool.
see. That's what I envision when I go out there and I talk to youth. I share my dream of that, but I think that's what I want to do so I can go out there and work more in depth with
Heck yeah, man.
more native country and have those credentials, because we got to have those credentials.
Yeah, just having them, get you in the door to more places sometimes. And all you need to do is get a foot in. Whether it's a piece of paper that gets you in, cool. Once you're in, you're in. That's what matters. Then you can really start making a difference in there. So that's awesome. So we're gonna get this thing wrapped up here. I'm just gonna do a quick closing, and then I have one kind of the final question of the hour. So to wrap up, I like to bring these little beats back from Podbeat app. Of course, you can turn any podcast or audiobook into a musical experience. Along with the Podbeat app, other great partners of the podcast are the June app, Joon. Love June, great for children if they struggle with behavior, habits, routine, anything like that. If you want to help them integrate a game, which, what kid doesn't love games, into their daily habit, June has you covered. It's fantastic. You can go to the description of this episode, click the link. You'll be able to try the June app absolutely for free with my link. And then if you love it and you want to keep doing it, get the annual subscription. You can also use the code YNGDED to do that as well. So enough of that. That's enough of the closing business there. So last question I'd like to have here is, let's say a young father comes up to you. Let's say he's 19 to 23 years old. Super young, super just out there, right? Just had his first kid. I was 22 when I became a dad, so I was crazy young. Let's say this father comes to you, and you know him like a little bit, but not a lot. If he comes to you, he's like, Levi, I just had my first kid. I don't know. Or let's say he calls you Mr. Horn. He's like, Mr. Horn, I don't know what to do, kind of thing, just to be respectful. What is one or two pieces of advice that you would give to him?
I mean, I said this to my wife even too. Like, we know what to do. We've been around this long. It's inherent. Like, it's inside of us. We know what's good. We know what's bad, and we're gonna get through it. This kid, it's not gonna be perfect, but this little human, we raise him with love. Foundation. If we raise this kid with love, we will make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. Forgive ourselves, forgive us, forgive everybody, and go forward. But I mean, just learn from those mistakes. Learn from this, because that's the only mistake is not learning from a mistake. Failure is the opportunity to go at it again with more knowledge. And that's what it is. I think so many times we're just so harsh on ourselves. We're looking at everybody's socials. We're comparing ourselves to everybody else. But we all don't have the same starting point. We all don't have the same experience. We all don't have the same knowledge. We don't have all the same resources around us. Just do it with love. Do it with good intention. And that's going to take care of it. That's really going to take care of it. And be humble. Be humble.
I love that, man. That's a beautiful message. One for any dad, no matter new or old or wherever you're at on your journey there. That's a beautiful message there. And so the listeners, if they want to connect with you, best place to find you, get in contact with you is levihorn.com, correct?
LeviHorn.com. Hit me up on Facebook. Hit me up on Instagram. LeviHorn79 for Instagram. That's as deep as I'm going to go with my socials.
Perfect.
Anything else is going to be too much and a waste of time, I feel like. So, yeah, hit me up at those ones. They're my emails. My contact information is at LeviHorn.com. Love to get out to your community, do cultural wellness with the companies, working with young adults, working with youth, doing workshops, anything like that. One of the things that drives me and keeps me get better.
Love that, man. Well, I appreciate that. And if the listeners want to find you, again, levihorn.com, LEVIHORN.com. And of course, while you guys are out scrolling the internet and looking up Levi, make sure you go to All the Things Young Dad Podcast. It's across X, Twitter, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, Young Dad Pod, literally on all the social media. It's super easy to find. Like, follow, subscribe. Make sure you leave 5 stars leave 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, leave reviews, comments, whatever you can to support the podcast, and over on YouTube as well. So we'll catch you next time right here on the podcast. Make sure you get some good rest, and we'll catch you next time.